Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because, well, you want to get right to the core of things. Yeah. Cut through the noise.
Think of this as your way to get those aha moments, but, faster.
Exactly. And today, we're diving deep into a really profound story from Islamic tradition. It's about Musa, Moses, as many know him, and his encounter with a figure called Al-Khidr, wise. A bit mysterious.
Yeah, and our source material for this dive comes from excerpts of pasted text. It's actually the first piece in a series for the Islam Decrypted YouTube channel.
Good stuff. Really aims for clarity.
Get straight to the point.
So our mission today is basically to unpack this story, pull out the big lessons. Why does it still matter so much, especially if you're trying to, grow spiritually or just understand life better?
Okay, so where do we start? Maybe with why stories are so central in the Quran itself.
Good point. It's not just for entertainment, is it?
No, not at all. It taps into something really fundamental about us humans. We learn through examples, through narratives, and there's a real comfort in hearing about others who face struggles.
Like that example in the text about Kansa and her brother.
Exactly. Her grief was huge, obviously, but seeing others share that kind of loss, it somehow, it lessened her personal burden a little. It's that shared human condition.
That sense of, I'm not alone in this. But the text adds a really important qualifier, doesn't it, about the hereafter?
It does. That verse from Surah Az-Zukhruf, it reminds us that, shared suffering might bring some solace here in this life. But in the hereafter, it's different. Everyone stands alone with their own deeds. No comfort in shared consequences then.
That really makes you stop and think.
Yeah.
And then there's the story of Aisha. May Allah be pleased with her during that incredibly difficult time, the slander incident.
Right. Even for her, in such deep distress, the simple act of another woman just weeping alongside her brought some comfort. It shows that basic human need for empathy.
It really does. And this ties into how the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, used stories too, right? Especially during the tough times in Mecca.
Absolutely. He used them to strengthen his companions, give them perspective. Stories like the sorcerer and the monk, or Abu Dhar's experience at the Kaaba. They weren't just tales.
They were like spiritual fuel, reminders.
Exactly. Reminders that, look, this path, the path of truth, it's always had trials. Always. From Adam, peace be upon him, right down to today.
The text mentions scholars being persecuted, even prophets like Yahya, John the Baptist, peace be upon him. Their lives show the cost sometimes.
Heavy costs, yeah. And remember that incident where someone treated the prophet, peace be upon him, quite harshly? His reaction was to think of Musa, peace be upon him, and the even greater difficulties he faced, and his patience, his finding strength in those who came before.
Looking back to look forward, in a way?
You can say that. So this pull towards stories, it's natural, it's powerful. The Quran itself says in Surah Yusuf, doesn't it? In their stories, there is truly a lesson for people of understanding.
Loads of wisdom packed in there.
For sure. And this story of Musa and Al-Khidr, it's definitely one of those. And the prophet, peace be upon him, actually gave further details on it too.
Okay, so let's get into Al-Khidr himself. The big question people often ask is, well, who was he? A wali, like a saint, a friend of God, or was he actually a prophet?
Yeah, and why does that distinction even matter?
Right. Why fuss over the label?
Well, it matters quite a bit, especially when you look at certain, let's say, interpretations, sometimes found in Sufism, where some might mistakenly suggest a wali could be higher than a prophet.
Which is a problem theologically.
A big one. So the view mentioned from Ibn al-Manadi is that establishing Al-Khidr as a prophet directly counters that idea.
Because prophethood isn't something you earn through piety alone. It's chosen. A direct divine appointment.
Precisely. It's a gift, a selection by Allah. And the text points to the Quran itself for evidence that Al-Khidr was a prophet.
Okay, what's the evidence?
Well, first you have Al-Khidr saying, "And I did it not of my own accord." That strongly implies divine instruction, not personal initiative.
Makes sense. He was acting on orders, so to speak.
Kind of, yeah. And second, the verse saying, "And we taught him from our own presence a knowledge." That specific phrasing, knowledge from our presence, is usually understood to refer to the kind of direct, inspired knowledge Allah gives to prophets.
Okay, so the textual evidence points towards prophethood. What about the argument that he wasn't, sent to a specific nation?
Good point. That touches on the difference between a prophet, nabi, and a messenger, rasul. A prophet receives revelation. A messenger also receives revelation, but is specifically tasked with delivering a message to a particular people.
So you can be a prophet without being a messenger sent to, say, the Israelites or the Arabs.
Exactly. Many prophets throughout history weren't messengers in that specific sense. They received divine knowledge, guidance, but maybe didn't have that same public nation-specific mission.
Like the really prominent messengers, the Ulu al-Azam mentioned briefly, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, and Muhammad, peace be upon them all.
Right. They're considered the most resolute, facing immense opposition and carrying huge messages. They stand out, but it doesn't negate the prophethood of others, like Al-Khidr.
So the majority scholarly view leans towards Al-Khidr being a prophet.
Yes, that's the predominant understanding. And it makes the whole encounter make more sense, doesn't it? One prophet learning specific things from another prophet, guided by Allah's wisdom.
It does. The text also mentions some confusion among the Jewish people at the time about whether this Musa was their Musa.
Yeah, their hesitation came from an assumption. They sort of figured, well, a prophet, especially the prophet Musa, should be the most knowledgeable person on earth, period.
And Musa himself had initially, perhaps humbly, spoken about his own knowledge before Allah corrected him.
Kind of. He answered a question about who was most knowledgeable, initially thinking it was himself, which was true in a general sense for his people and his law. But then Allah revealed, no, there's our servant Al-Khidr who has knowledge you don't possess.
Which brings us right to that key question. Okay, so was Al-Khidr actually more knowledgeable than Musa, peace be upon him?
Right, the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the answer, very clearly, is no. Absolutely not.
Okay, unpack that. How can he have knowledge Musa doesn't, but not be more knowledgeable overall?
Because the knowledge Al-Khidr had was incredibly specific. It was granted by Allah for those particular events they experienced on their journey. It was tailored knowledge for a teaching purpose.
Ah, so like specialized intel for a specific mission.
You could put it that way, yeah.
Yeah.
In every other respect, understanding of the law, overall divine knowledge, status as a major messenger, Musa, peace be upon him, was vastly superior. No comparison, really.
So Al-Khidr wasn't generally smarter or wiser. He just had the specific answers for those three incidents.
Exactly. And even Al-Khidr acknowledged this implicitly. Remember the analogy he used?
The bird dipping its beak in the sea.
That's the one. He said something like, my knowledge and your knowledge compared to Allah's knowledge is like what this bird takes from the sea. Just a tiny drop compared to the infinite ocean.
Wow. Puts it in perspective.
And the text also mentions Al-Khidr, acknowledging Musa's unique position, receiving the Torah directly from Allah. There was mutual respect.
So the whole point of the encounter wasn't to show Al-Khidr was better, but to teach Musa something.
Exactly. To teach Musa, peace be upon him and through him. To teach all scholars, all teachers, all muftis, religious legal experts, a crucial lesson.
Which is?
Humility. The importance of always attributing ultimate knowledge to Allah. Recognizing human limitations, even for a great prophet.
That connects to why a mufti, when giving a ruling, often says, Allahu alam, God knows best. It's not that they're unsure of their reasoning, is it?
Not usually, no. It's not like saying, I guess, maybe.
Right.
It's an expression of adab, of proper manners with Allah. It's acknowledging, I've studied, I've reasoned, this is my best understanding based on the evidence. But absolute, perfect, comprehensive knowledge is only with Allah. My understanding could be incomplete, or there might be wisdom I don't grasp. It's profound humility.
That example of Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, and the compensation for fingers really drives this home. Can you remind us of that?
Sure. So Umar, based on his logical reasoning, a thumb is more useful than a pinky, initially ruled that the daya, the compensation money, should differ depending on the finger lost.
Seems logical on the surface.
It does. But later, Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with them both, narrated that the Prophet, peace be upon him, had actually taught that the compensation for all fingers is equal.
Ah, so Umar's ruling, though reasoned, was incorrect based on the Prophet's teaching.
Correct. But the crucial part is, Umar wasn't blamed for that initial incorrect ruling. Why? Because he exercised his best judgment based on the knowledge available to him at that time.
He was striving sincerely.
Exactly. And that's where the hadith comes in about the judge or ruler who strives. If they get it right, they get 2 rewards. If they strive sincerely but get it wrong, they still get 1 reward for their effort.
So it values the sincere effort even with human fallibility?
Precisely. It acknowledges our limitations while encouraging diligence.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive then, we've seen how powerful stories are in the Quran, how they teach and console. We've looked at why the scholarly consensus points to Al-Khidr being a prophet, not just a wali.
Yep, an important distinction.
And crucially, we've explored this idea that even the greatest minds, like Musa, peace be upon him, have limits, and true wisdom involves recognizing that ultimate knowledge belongs only to Allah, that Allahu Alam.
Absolutely. Which leads us to maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on.
Go for it.
How does really internalizing the sheer vastness of divine knowledge compared to our own, how might that change your approach to learning? Whether it's religious knowledge, science, your job, anything.
Balancing that drive to learn, to know more, with the humility of knowing there's always an ocean beyond our drop.
Exactly. How do you hold both that diligence and that humility? Something to definitely reflect on.